of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So I'm looking to see, have a few people in the Zoom. Okay, interpreters in the Zoom room, ready if anybody cares to join us. English speakers and Spanish speakers and other language speakers, welcome. So moving ahead to public forum sign up. I think we don't need that. Visitor guest book. We have a guest, but I don't think they need to sign in. And any announcements? Anybody have announcements? So first order of business is board organization. Elect the board chair and vice chair for 2023-24. And as a reminder, I am not eligible to be board chair. I've had this chair for 4 years running and per the law, that's as much as you get of me, which is a good thing for everyone. And then for vice chair, all of us are eligible for vice chair, except for whoever we elect to be chair. Just a little bit about the roles. The role of chair is a bit of an extra lift. It does result in meeting for agenda planning, at least monthly, with Rachel a couple weeks ahead of the regular meetings, and then on demand as needed for just running stuff by the board chair. And the heaviest lift for me was when we were recruiting for the superintendent role. And I don't anticipate that happening in the near future. One never knows. So, so there's a little bit of extra that comes with board chair. Another role that we have agreed as a board that the board chair assumes is if we do get communications from the public, the board chair responds on behalf of the board to those communications. So they're not hearing from more than one. And that's about it. So, and then vice chair fills in for the chair when the chair is unable to be at meetings and can be a sounding board with the chair if they need advice. So that said, nominations are open for chair for this school board.
I would like to nominate Andrea Fowl to be chair.
Right. Any second?
Second.
Okay, I'm going to give the second to Teresa, moved by Irene, seconded by Teresa. Any other nominations? And Andy, do you accept? I accept. Okay. Okay, I'm closing the nominations. All in favor of Andy being our next board chair? Aye. And opposed? And abstains? Abstains. So you are now. Congratulations. Yay.
You might have to.
Always.
Okay. All right, I'll take nominations for 2023-2024 vice chair.
I would like to nominate Teresa for the vice chair.
I second that.
Any other nominations? Teresa, do you accept? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, Teresa, welcome to vice chair.
Good job, guys.
Yay.
Yay.
Now moving on to our 2023-2024 school board calendar. Pretty much the same as it has been in the past. There was one correction, correct me if I'm wrong, we moved something to later in the year. Do you remember that? What that was?
There are
A
actually
few things.
Okay.
quite a few things to be more in sync with how we're approaching the strategic plan now, how often the SIPs play into this now. Also, there was a law about required transfers in that time period that's no longer in play in the state anymore. So that's been taken out. A few little adjustments here and there.
Any questions?
I want to thank Rachel and Jill for updating and cleaning up our board calendar. That was a little bit of a tedious job.
Accept or
Should we, I had a question.
Yes.
Of course. I looked at the December 11th TAG program report. Is that the first time that we get any information on TAG?
Yes, although you could request more information. It's a once a year annual report.
Oh, it's a once a year annual report versus, because I know we had the board because we were gonna redo the tag board policies and we were gonna redo all of that and there was new laws. I was just wondering if that's a timely thing. Does it need to be sooner? Does it need to be later? That was just my question.
It's a good question.
Yeah, because of the new state
New
qualifications.
state qualifications and I don't know if looking at that, I don't want. If there has to be some different identification and if it's, do we just begin in December after we do the report? I'm just kind of wondering about some of that.
To my knowledge, Director Gordon has not received feedback yet from the state of Oregon on what she submitted as a plan. So it's something that I can continue to review on.
Okay, thank you.
And I would think that as a board, if we want to learn about something sooner, or if we want to adjust something later, we can.
Okay, that's my only question is the tag
As
one.
we-
Thank you.
That just takes,
Okay,
work from the
that
board to
kind of
make
gives
that
us a
clear.
reminder. Okay.
well, I would move to adopt the board calendar as presented.
Second.
Any other discussion? Okay. All in favor of accepting the board calendar? Opposed? Passes unanimously. Next, the organization and procedural resolutions. Rachel, anything updated, switched compared to last year on this?
We need to adopt this. Approve it officially.
Not that I can recall.
Any questions about it? Okay. Next, our school board operating protocol. This is what we updated back in January 2021. Any questions about what we adopted, the updates we'd like to make?
I think we did a good job.
Okay. Next, our equity plan. I did have one question on this equity plan. The top of the equity plan, does that stay the same of who adopted it initially? Because it has our old superintendent out there, or does it need to be updated?
Right?
Yeah, just put it, yeah, that's a good
Okay.
idea.
And this had not been, in my tenure here, this has not been reviewed with the board. So this is the first time with me in this position.
Everybody get a chance to look at our equity plan. Any questions that came up about?
Rachel, how do you feel about the plan? Are you good with it or?
I'm good with it. I like the hard questions that it's asking because until we have affirmative answers for all of these, the journey continues. And so I'm very comfortable with them, but I'd love to hear from the board if there is different input or just input in general.
Well, I would say this was, I don't even remember when we created
I
this.
think, didn't we do that when we were, we got had that scholarship and then part of it, we did the training. I think we developed it at
Yeah, I
that
think
time,
this is
so.
an outcome of that, and I think it still stands. I think we
Yeah.
did a good job of bringing in some good.
There was a lot
Seems pretty
into
relevant.
this.
Yeah.
Did this came through OSBA?
It OSBA guided the process.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would say 4 years.
Yeah.
4 years ago, we did this.
I think the guiding questions are great.
Yeah, I thought it was good, but I was just.
We need to adopt, okay. Just that one little change with our letterhead would be fantastic. All right. Moving on to our agenda. Motion to approve the agenda.
I move that we approve the agenda.
Second, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. All right, our consent items. Anything that needs to be taken out? Okay. I want to point out a new addition, effective today. Congratulations to Jessica Brennan, our new principal at JFK. Thank you for coming on board. And Rachel, thank you for all your work, especially during your vacation time. To get that hire done quickly, so thank you.
My pleasure.
All right, I'll entertain a motion to accept the consent items.
And move we approve the consent as presented.
Second. Second. All in favor? Passes unanimously. All right.
Jill, can you list me as abstaining?
That's
Oh. Hi, sorry, thank you. I'm not seeing any license or classified representatives to get a report this evening. It's reasonable, it's July, hopefully they're enjoying their summer off. Budget report, Christy, great news you have to share.
mhm,
It is actually good news.
it is good news.
Okay. So I'll do the financials first, and I just have like a little bit of extra information about the budget. So these are just preliminary numbers. I still have to go and move some things around for grants and that sort of thing, but this is my best guess as of right now, and it's not going to change like substantially or anything like that. We're just talking like maybe moving something over to from a grant or to a grant. So first document here is for the food service fund. And so you could see for June, our total revenue was $45,156. And so for a total for the 2022-23 is $439,106. For total expenditures, pretty just normal month in terms of our expenditures, salaries, benefits. And our total expenses was $51,549. So our total expenses were $463,624. So as you can see, we did dip into our reserves and go over, but we do have a plan for that for this coming year. There's a projected transfer that will come in a general fund to cover this. Any questions on this?
I noticed even though June's a very short month as far as number of school days compared to other months, it's one of our higher revenue months. I noticed that the federal reimbursement is higher than normal. Is that kind of like?
Well, it's a month behind too, so these are May's lunches. So yeah, it's not a true reflection of the month of June. Any other questions on this one? Okay. General fund. You can see for June, we had a pretty good amount of taxes that came through. Interest is still high because we have some healthy balances in our LGIP accounts. About 41,000 in other local revenue was our solar panel. The majority of that was our solar panel funds. Let's see, that $8,400 is basically a grant paying for sub costs for a few of our like MAN training and crisis training, some of that. $4,000 is the Nike grant that we got again this coming year. They gave it to us at the end of the school year. And that 70,000 is the last amount of money that we took from ESSER this year. So you can see we only took 141,000. And so our projection for carryover for next year was right on track. So we have the right amount for that. So total revenue for the month was 160,488. If you take out right here. What Excel. I was going to say I could tell you what real quick what our total revenue was. Just 1 second there. So the 10,348,000 includes our beginning fund balance. So let me take that out and then I can give you total revenue was a little over, almost 9.6 million for the year, which is definitely up for us. And we were 107% of the goal, so our budget, so that's nice. For expenses, it's our month where we pay out for most employees, there are 3 checks, so that's why you see an increase in salaries. Everything else is just pretty much standard for the month. Our total expenses were 1.5 million. So right now we're projecting an ending fund balance of a little under 1.7 million, which is really great. You know, we only, I think, budgeted for what off the top of my head, like 750,000. So the rest of that will be unappropriated. Can't spend it unless obviously we did a budget, a supplemental budget or something like that. But so yeah, and I don't see that number changing up, like I said, a whole lot. So any questions on this?
Just good job to the district that, you know, only, expenditures only 90% of what you forecasted. It's fantastic. So I'm not really sure exactly what you did, but
Keep it up.
yeah, keep it up.
Thanks. Okay, and then just a real quick report update on you probably have heard it in the news, but just the PDF. Okay, so as you know, the final budget was approved by the state. It included increase for state school fund at 10.2 billion. And the Student Investment Act, or SIA, was at 1.087 billion. So both of those are increases. They also approved House Bill 3198, which is an early literacy success initiative. And they carved out $90 million for grants for school districts. And so allowable uses, as you can see, professional development and coaching, in research-aligned literacy strategies, extend learning programs that use research-aligned literacy strategies, high dosage tutoring delivered by a qualified tutor, and then also adoption of curriculum that uses research-aligned literacy strategies. In 2023-24, we can use up to 20% of whatever our budget is. We haven't heard what that is yet for 4th and 5th grade. And then that number goes down the following year. It also requires a 25% match. The good thing about this is we already were thinking of adopting ELA. So, you know, this will help. We already put some money aside. So that 25% is really covered. So that was pretty exciting. There were a few other bills that were passed, but at this point, there's not like a huge budget impact. So that's why they're not included. So just quickly, what does it mean for us? As you know, we budgeted at 10.1. So the 10.2 is an increase of about 116,000. But because it wasn't budgeted, we would not be able to use these funds unless there's a resolution. So basically that just goes to our unappropriated. And then our updated SIA allocations will be released in sometime in July. I anticipate them going up because the preliminary ones came out. When the preliminary ones came out, they were based on our old ADM, not our new ADM. So I think we'll get a little boost from that. But honestly, it's not, when you're talking about SIA, it's not going to be a huge bump, but we'll take anything we get. So any questions at all on this?
I do have some questions, and if you can't answer them
Okay.
tonight, no big deal. So it's $90 million in the grants. So is that kind of something like, okay, based on how many kids you have, this is how much you can get, or are you applying?
So it's a non-competitive grant. So my guess, this is totally a guess, they'll do like where they just give everybody allocation. And like the state with the summer school, they did this. They give everybody an allocation and you say, yes, I want this. And then you get approved for it. And then if other people say they don't want it, then at the end that they'll reallocate for those funds. But I think that it'll be some calculation that they come up with. I don't know what that is. So as soon as I do, I can let you know.
That's interesting because I had the same question. So when do we apply, or when does that window open that we could possibly say, yay, we want it? I mean, who monitors that?
Well, I monitor
Okay.
that, but they'll send emails out.
They'll send emails out, and then we'll have like a packet, I just want to make sure that
So-
we're just like good to go.
Oh, yeah, no, so typically what happens is, in the past, is they will send out correspondence and say, like, if it's like summer school, for example, they'll send out correspondence and they'll say, this is what the approved amount is, do you want it or do you not? And then we say yes, and then they do their grant.
Well, they give you a timeline, don't they?
Yes,
And so that's what I was kind of worried about, as soon as we get that, and do we need to submit a grant proposal?
it's a non-competitive grant, so it's,
But still, yeah,
it'll be really, normally it's like a smart sheet or like a
Okay.
Google form that we fill out, just saying if we want to participate or not. So it's, they make it that front at least very easy,
okay,
yeah.
just want to make sure we get money.
Oh, that
I really like
it.
you know,
Yeah.
This 90 million is really kind of like
yeah,
45 and 45 mil to the districts, right? It's over 2 years, that 90 million for 1 year.
I thought it was this year, but maybe you're right, maybe it is the biennium.
it's a buy-in, I think it's a buy-in, well, it could be.
But I'm just thinking back to the June board meeting when we got the targeted information about our current second graders going into third and knowing the importance of students being on track at that third grade level.
Right,
And like really seeing that like, wow, we could use this money and really
Right.
help
right,
over 50% of those kids. And yes, we still have fourth, and fifth graders that also need that help. So I'm looking forward to seeing what how we're gonna use funds. For readers.
I have yet to receive any information on this bill passing and the parameters around it.
Well, it was a bit chaotic. This line, and the second was supposed to be chaotic. Like, very sad.
But as it becomes available, I'm happy to share that information.
I know you don't know much information, I'm just being anxious that
Yeah,
you get money and we want money.
oh, yeah. And trust me, I stay up on that because I love free money.
And that has nothing to do with the budget we passed.
Right,
Correct.
Okay,
correct,
good.
that's extra money.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right,
Thank you, Christine.
Yeah.
Moving on to our superintendent. report.
Okay. All right, so tonight there are two parts to the report, and one of them is in the slide deck, the other is in the packet. So we're going to start with tonight's topic of the annual school district equity report. And this is background information. It was just a year ago that as a school board, you approved new language in policy JBB, educational equity. And it was the very last two sentences in that policy that were changed to the following language. The superintendent shall develop an action plan and include equity practices in the district's strategic plan strategies to implement this policy. The superintendent will annually report to the board the progress of the action plan. So that was a year ago. In July of last year, just a year ago, an outside facilitator conducted a parent listening session. The attendees provided multiple examples of statements that were racist, actions that were racist, that have taken place at all three of our schools in the Mount Angel School District. And in response, I developed an action plan in conjunction with the strategic plan to address both implicit and explicit bias in our schools. So tonight's report provides you an outline of the actions that have been taken in the last 11 months. So one of the first actions that happened was school board partnership. In the August superintendent report last summer, I included the following information to you, very specific examples of what had been reported during that parent listening session. A lack of response to racist incidents that was perceived by parents. I shared with you pretty discouraging historical academic disparity data, and also school district goals and expectations for the schools as it relates to this. And then in February, there was a board work session on equity and inclusion with the training from the Kaleidoscope Project. A second action and or strategy is the school district strategic plan, which was approved by the board the following month in August. And inclusive practices are expected and interwoven into the 4 priority areas and the 15 collective commitments are 4 priority areas of academic excellence, thriving students, engaging family and community partnerships, and safe schools and departments. When the administrators reported back after a nice summer relaxation time, as an admin team, we focused on the following: really following through thoroughly with student and parent concerns. What does that look like all the way from beginning to end? What does professional learning for administrators look like, and evaluating staff on using an equity lens? How do we take our current framework, which we call the Danielson framework, and add another layer to it, which is the important layer of equity? And then some other things that were talked about because they came up in the parent listening sessions, some concern about teachers needing to focus more on state standards rather than on personal opinion, and increasing an emphasis and follow through with confidentiality. Another big action that happened this year were the comprehensive improvement plans for the schools, the progress monitoring of achievement and climate goals. And there were 2 areas for each of those: raising the bar for all students and closing the racial gap. Again, both for academics and climate, with an important emphasis on school climate and student well-being that's based on data. Quarterly progress reports that the superintendent provides to the board. Again, historical academic data shared with administrators, but also with all staff. That was required during in-service week last year. And weekly district level data analysis team meetings that Director Gordon led. Any questions thus far? Professional learning for all staff. So two pieces there. One, we have safe schools training that all staff have to take in early fall, and then they take quizzes on everything that they watch. And we added the module of cultural competence and racial bias. But the big one last year was 5 half days of training through the Kaleidoscope project, with a focus on equity and inclusion, personal bias, both implicit and explicit, and sharing every session student and parent stories, local. So something that was established in September last fall was the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee. And we made sure to think about who was and was not at the table and who needs to continue to come to the table, making sure that there's parent, student, outside facilitator being Dr. Chavez from the ESD, an administrator and a teacher. And we will be expanding that this year by adding at least one more parent who can provide voice for students with disabilities, and 2 more students who can add voice to their experiences. The goals include increasing inclusive practices by all staff using an equity framework tool. The framework will be a guide to assess our own level of competency in our practices, but we don't have the framework yet. The recruitment of bilingual and or bicultural staff, very important to make sure that our staff, we strive to represent what our student demographics are. We were able to expand our representation of student demographics in the hiring of teachers, administrators, and paraeducators last year. And then a small but important one, an action, was bringing along Parent Square, because that makes the job and work easier for our staff so that they don't have to try and find someone to translate, interpret. They can just automatically click and make sure that the message is translated. Strategic plan goal setting, which we're going to talk about next. While inclusive practices are interwoven in every aspect of the strategic plan, there are also some specific EDI strategies and actions that really need to be called out tonight. One is representative enrollment in high school offerings, ensuring that schools and departments are welcoming, friendly, and supportive spaces, increasing and enhancing events that draw families into our schools, promoting and celebrating all cultures and backgrounds, the student belonging survey, and representative student participation in student clubs, organizations, and sports. Really also taking a closer look at the goals and measurements around student well-being, the emphasis on student opportunities that promote voice, safety, trust, and respect. This was our second year using the student belonging survey, really looking at that data, listening to our students. And this year we also completed student empathy interviews so we could better understand from our students who are experiencing a gap, why that might be so, really listening to them and their stories. So those are all of the actions that we put into play this year. A lot of work, a lot of people. Are there any questions about that?
On the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee, just out of curiosity, you said you want to add 2 students
Yes.
to that committee. Are they going to be secondary?
Yes, yeah,
High school, middle, and middle
probably
school?
high school.
Yeah.
Yeah. And a natural place to pull from might be the teen advisory board to
Oh, yeah.
start.
Question, that's a good, that's the same question. The student empathy interviews that conducted, how did you, or the committee, how did they identify who to interview?
Okay, that's a fair and good question. So Nick looked at the students who definitely had an achievement gap, asked for permission from the parents to see if they would be willing to have their child be interviewed, asked permission from the student to see if they wanted to participate. And he was able to get, I believe, 23 or 24. Yeah, he worked really hard at that project for months, asking them questions such as, at what age did you start to feel that you were falling behind from your peers? Really learning some interesting information about students' self-worth, sense of belonging when they started to feel a disconnect as early as grade school. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other
Okay.
questions? Thank you, Rachel.
Well, now I'm going to head into this
A lot of work.
plan.
Good job.
Well, it's a team effort.
Team effort.
Definitely a team effort, and a lot of people working for the common good for our students. And that's very apparent. So for the second part of my report, you have this in your packet, and it's the strategic plan quarterly report. And it's a lot of pages, and I decided putting it in a slide deck would be visually very frustrating. So it's not up there for you. But you have it in the packet, and I just wanted to go through this very quickly. And then I'd like to share with you some thoughts and lessons that I learned this year about this very enormous but important work. What we found was that we're trying to prevent what we call DRIP, D-R-I-P, data-rich information poor. And what we have is a lot of data, but we're trying to figure out what information to pull from it. So I'll be sharing that when I'm through. But if you look at priority 1, you'll see that the only new data there is that in semester 2 in our advanced classes, we found that 40% of our students were Hispanic, and non-Hispanic students made up 60%. There's some work to do there.
What, sorry.
Yeah.
My question is, what is our demographic? Like,
Almost
Student-
50-50.
it's 50-50?
Mhm.
Okay, and my second question, you might not know the answer to this, is what was it the prior year? Like, has it improved Like, is there some positive, like, yes, we're not there yet, but we have improved from the previous year?
I like that question and I don't have an
Okay,
answer.
that's fine.
Something to work on though. As far as priority area 1, academic excellence, commitment 2, many things here were ongoing. We did have our licensed staff complete a PLC survey, and it was pretty comprehensive late this spring, looking at 4 areas: their own self-awareness about the PLC cycle, the skills for engagement with others, how to what degree are they engaging with their colleagues, and what's getting in the way of engaging. We got some great information about that, and I look forward to having this survey every year. Handbook for PLCs has not yet been started. It's something that needs to happen. Commitment number 3. So under formative assessments 1.9, assessments are being analyzed during the PLC cycle, and I do believe that our staff, our licensed staff, our administrators can benefit from additional training on the frequency of formative assessments and the power of feedback to students from formative assessments. And to that end, we do have a national, international speaker coming during in-service week to talk with elementary and then separately with secondary about that. Student grades and marks. Okay, this is, I can talk about this later as well, but this has been an interesting project and challenge for our administrators because we're using a very old platform from Lynn Benton Lincoln ESD. The switch over from PowerSchool might make it easier to collect this data and share it with you. One of the other pieces that we are seeing is that we want to make sure that it's not self-identifiable. And there were times that we bumped into that this year. So it's something that we need to continue to look at and have a discussion about. Any questions? Maybe? We did note at the top of page 3 that there is still a disparity if we disaggregate what we have between Hispanic and non-Hispanic students. The why is something that we need to keep digging deeper on. Could be missing assignments, could be that some of our Latino students do not have the time, the luxury of time at home, or maybe the support at home. We've certainly learned that through our student empathy interviews, that often there is no one who can support them at home to help them complete those assignments. But that's
I
definitely.
have a little question on that. So when you disaggregate that data for Hispanic students, do we also disaggregate on their language levels? Are they?
No, we easily could though.
Because I was just wondering, you're just like lumping all the Hispanic students together. And there could be English proficient Hispanic students, or there could be mildly proficient Hispanic students, or non-proficient English students in that group. And that's where, you can't help somebody until you know where you're at. So I'm just wondering about that.
A good point, and I would just contribute to that by saying we do have former English learners who are bilingual and are proficient,
Right.
but the parents may not be.
That's
So
correct. You're
part of
correct.
trying to get those assignments done, and many of our students feeling the pressure of aloneness and trying to accomplish without the support. They go with couples for sure. 1.12, so we have preliminary state data. And you'll have a formal report in October, because right now the state is sifting and sorting through those numbers, kicking out kids through the data that shouldn't be there, those kinds of things. But here it is for you. The average in our district grades 3 through 11 is 45% for English language arts. Not to discourage you, but part of what makes that so high is that the numbers at 11th grade are very high. It's almost 80% proficiency in English language arts. So actually at the lower levels, it's smaller. Not as small as math, however. To my dismay, grades 3 through 11, 23.71%. We could have discussion on that if you want, but I would advise that we look at what the formal data is in the fall.
I'd like to have discussion on that after our formal data, maybe in a work session or something.
Yeah.
You know,
That's probably the thing that stuck out the most.
Yeah.
The whole, report.
after we get the data and the work session.
And do. Commitment number 4 has to do with response to intervention. We completed a lot for this year, 4 things are ongoing. Tier 2 is definitely a work in progress. We are finding that at secondary, due to the scheduling, it is a very different challenge to try and fit that into the school day. So what we are seeing is the elementary looks quite different in terms of how often tier 2 is offered. Questions on that?
My question on the scheduling, is it because of like how small of a school we are, or is it like how that class period defined is structured? Like that's my wondering, like,
Yes.
yes to both.
Yes, and doesn't the diversity of classes by the kids in high school
That is
have
part
a
of it.
huge impact as well, I would think, because in primary, the whole class is doing the same thing all day. Basically, I mean, they're differences, but in high school, different kids have completely different schedules from one another.
What we're finding is that at the high school, we really need to do a reset on the definition and expectations around advisory. And what happens during advisory, which is when tier 2 interventions should be happening. Those will be some discussions that we have for sure. But that is part of it. And then part of it is the singleton work of trying to collaborate with peers when someone's doing something completely different from you. The high school has tried doing an all school goal. And what they found is that they thought where the kids needed help, they don't need help. So they wrestled with that for like the last 2 months of school, gave it everything they had, looking at informational text and citing evidence. And in the end, after looking and analyzing all of the formative data results, the kids did exceedingly well. They've also tried it the other way, looking at different content areas, and teachers are feeling very alone, as is the case with being a singleton. So we need to find a sweet spot. It's going to be a challenge, but it can be accomplished. Okay. Let's see. Was I on commitment 4? Yes, I was. Finishing commitment 4. Any other questions on that? No? Okay. Priority number 2, thriving students. So 2.1, this is an interesting one because this is the first year that all staff in all 3 schools did and it used a strategic evaluation tool to look at PBIS. And the power of that is that it wasn't an administrator, it wasn't a team that looked at what they thought was best for the school. Every teacher got to provide input as far as where they saw there might be some holes and gaps. Where are the problems happening? When is it becoming a pattern? And if so, how do we as a whole school look at addressing that and owning how to find the solutions to that? So I have that data in my office, and I think the most important piece to that was that staff knew that their voices were heard, and that any kind of changes or modifications to student expectations next year will be directly because of the input that they gave, as well as the discipline referrals. Student belonging survey. What we found, and this data was shared with you just a couple of minutes ago, but I really tend to focus on high school because that's where it grows exponentially in that division and not feeling a sense of belonging. one of the questions that really stood out to me is I can really be myself at school. The total overall of students at JFK, 58% said, yeah, I can really be myself at school. And even that feels low to me at only 58%. But our Latino students, only 38% said they could really feel or be themselves at school. So there's work to do there. It's an important survey. I'm glad we do it. The teen health survey, I just received a couple of weeks ago. I haven't even cracked it open yet, to be quite honest with you. But it's important information to look at. Again, it's because it's coming from the students and what they're telling us. So this will be on the beginning of August administrative retreat that we spend a couple of days looking at data and deciding where to head for the upcoming school year. 2.5, the EDI committee. I think I already shared with you, we don't have a framework yet. We'd like to get a newsletter out district-wide twice a year so people don't just wonder what we do, or worse than that, they don't even know we exist or know what to wonder about. We want to make sure that the word is out. And I would just add one little seed for you to be thinking about. In the year 2025, EDI committees will be a requirement statewide for every district, and the superintendents will no longer be able to sit on those committees. Wow, it's really disappointing for me, professionally and personally. There are some unusual pieces to it. There's some great pieces to it as well, but just my passion is going to have to get driven in another direction, I think, as we maneuver through this.
Does it give a reasoning as to why?
I have not read enough to look through the reasoning. I'm sure there's some kind of a justification somewhere that someone thinks is valid. But again, for me, it's
Would there be
painful.
some sort of administrator of some kind?
Yes, there can be, but there cannot be a school board member, I don't believe, or the superintendent.
Yeah, my guess would be that staff wouldn't feel comfortable being transparent and honest.
That's
With fear of retribution or backlash. That's my sense of why that would be. Yeah, who knows? When they're writing the rules, who knows who they hear from.
More to be revealed there, but just wanted you to know that that will soon be coming. 2.6 DESA, and you had a report from administrators last month about that. It was completed, and in September, the guiding coalitions at all 3 schools will be looking at that data. Commitment to establishing, strengthening, sustaining a leadership team is all about the guiding coalition. I had someone ask me today how they thought that was going, an outside person, someone from Studer that I'm working with. And I feel that it's going really well. All 3 schools have a healthy start to that work. The piece that is the challenge for each of them is making sure that they're not doing the work. They're motivating the work so that there is true collective ownership in the entire school. And so that's, I believe, where the focus will be next year. 2.8 staff climate survey. We didn't have to do one in-house because the state went back to doing an all-state one, and I don't have the data on that yet. Some of you may remember years ago that teachers were asked to fill out the TEL survey. This is another iteration of that. The TEL survey took a lot of time, but the data from it was really good. So that will give us a lot of great information. Response to intervention 2.9. Complete. To ensure that guiding coalitions really looked at how they were going to offer tier 2 for social and emotional well-being. Commitment 3, promoting each student's emotional and social growth through connection and services to and within the community. Unfortunately, this is an area where data was not submitted. And so I don't have as much as I would like to be able to share with you there. But I do have information from both the middle school and from the elementary school about where we're at with connections between schools and businesses, and service to the community. And any questions? Do I keep moving? Okay. Commitment for creating and expanding activities based on the expressed interest of the students. We have data on where our students were at MAMS and St. Mary's as far as student participation in sports clubs and activities. Spring sample, finding out what the barriers are for students did not happen. There were simply a lot of other requirements that were needed this spring to be taken care of. So it's very time intensive to be able to pull that off. And then for student clubs and events and expanded course offerings specific to the high school, the survey was not offered this year.
Is there particular barriers to what got in the way there?
It's unknown to me.
Okay. I think if you look back at the student participation in clubs, our goal is 60% of students. In MAMS is at 83%, and St. Mary's is at 79%. So that's
awesome.
fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, we exceeded that by a lot. It's great numbers to see.
Looking at priority area number 3, engaging family and community partnerships. A family parent survey, I aspire to get that out at the end of this school year. It hasn't happened yet, but what I'd like to do is take a number of topics and put them into one survey at the beginning of the fall. Talks about communication, talks about welcome environment, talks about how the connections they have with the school, all those things. As I believe I shared with you already earlier this spring, 3.2, we've pushed welcome audits back to this fall. Again, time was a huge issue here. Don't believe there's anything new in this section. 3.6, I shared that report with you tonight. Is 3.7. Sorry, I'm going too quickly. Commitment number 2, priority number 3, family events. So we have St. Mary's and MAMS again. Huge participation there. Coding night was a great success for St. Mary's. MAMS has done, Mr. Taylor's done an outstanding job all year of providing friendship activities almost monthly on Saturdays for families. Family participation results will be shared with the District Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee. I'm planning on that for September. And then volunteer opportunities, we have data from St. Mary's and from MAMS. Any questions?
No, I think that St. Mary's number will continue to grow. You know, especially with COVID. Now with the not needing proof of vaccination or to ask to be exempt process has been eliminated. Like I think more and more people will be coming back at both levels. So I look forward to those numbers growing as well.
It's really great to see. Priority 3, commitment 3, ensuring transparent communication, making sure that we send information out in both English and Spanish and have it available, just like we do tonight at the board meeting. Making sure that what we communicate out to our community and to our parents is always in the Spanish and English. Board accessibility. Those are all ongoing. Commitment 4, streamline communication systems. District commitments, it's on my front burner of my stove to make sure that all stakeholders have a copy of our district strategic plan and how they are part of that. That's a summer project for me. The communication platform 3.13 with Parent Square. What Scott May and I learned when I shared this with you 3 months ago was that the numbers were so low at 49% because we were looking at parent rather than household. And actually the household number is much higher. So we're at 75%.
It's good.
Yeah. There's still work to do though. We want 100% away. But it certainly is much improvement over 49%. The survey, customer satisfaction survey, that will be part of that fall survey that I do. And the district communication plan was updated and shared with administrators this year. That's complete. In priority 4, safe schools and departments, commitment 1, safety inspections. All schools are doing those as required and needed. We want to make sure that oops, I got them jumbled up. All right, looking at the wrong page. Standard response protocol 4.2, that was done for the year. I think our schools did an outstanding job of communicating to parents, the families, why. Reunification exercise 4.3, still working with Chief on that. Looking at early November to do our reunification exercise. Safe schools training, district safety work sessions, those are all complete. Staff injury reports are shared with you on a quarterly basis. Commitment number 2, facility use. We did revise and make sure that that form was available electronically. To be honest, we need to come up with a plan for how we're going to promote facility use with our patrons. What does that look like and how do we do it? So we'll be talking about that as an admin team this spring. The facility use request form was translated into Spanish. And finally, priority 4, commitment number 3, 4.9, hey, what do you know? We had a bond pass. That was wonderful news. The long-range facility assessment will be cross-referenced. So 4.10, Marty and I are working on what remains, not in deferred maintenance, but just in terms of cleaning and making sure we're up to date with cleaning. And we have been able to find another, Christy was able to find another 4 hours to budget and put in there. So we have a half-time custodian to add to the team this coming school year. We're all very happy about that. And then deferred maintenance, it's my pleasure to tell you that this school year started with 244 work orders, and Marty and his team have been able to get them down to 5 work orders that are still open and 33 pending. Awesome.
I'd like to recognize that team at a board meeting, like in September or something, for all the good work that they're doing. That would be
great idea.
something that would be a good thing to do, is because that's a lot of work and they've worked really hard. And
Well, even when you walk around the facility, it's like
Yeah.
high school, things have been picked up and
It looks-
cleaned up. It's much nicer. Just the grounds are just.
absolutely, I've noticed that. And I think they deserve that recognition.
Absolutely. I like that suggestion, and I know they'll like that too.
Marty loves public.
Yeah. He was out there every day, July 4th weekend with the water, assuming to get things wet, just in case there was an accident. The ground was wet, so he was out there every day,
Yeah,
getting ready for that.
that's right.
There's no question that that entire team is committed to the work they do. The last piece I wanted to share with you about the strategic plan quarterly reports are just some thoughts I have upon reflection and the lessons I've learned in year 1. Things to keep in mind as we all move forward next year. So first, keeping the action document living. Observations and short-term outcomes influence the need to change. So it could be that based on newer observations that we start to see that some of these things are not as relevant as other things that might need to get put on there. As an example, some actions were overly demanding. Doing student participation interviews to see why there were roadblocks or barriers, that was really time intensive, and we just didn't have the staff to be able to do that. So that's just something for us to consider and to think about moving forward. This next one was huge. When everything is a priority, nothing becomes the priority. And many things were executed this year. You've seen many things executed, but the impact was less than anticipated. And if everything can't happen all at once, we need to look at, what do you do with your sense of urgency there? Because everything in there felt urgent, right? But being able to have it happen all at the same time is very difficult. So having a laser-like focus is really what leads to improvement efforts. And we may need to prioritize the priorities. That might be a real.
Multi-year plan, action planning.
And a focus on too many things also really takes away from celebrating bright spots. Because you're so focused on trying to get so many things done that you don't necessarily, one doesn't necessarily pause to celebrate something that's gone really well. So that was a big lesson. Also eliminating what is complete and or is now common practice. So there are things in here that have become common practice or are complete. It's just good to get them off the slate, right? And then consider less actions, but be more explicit in the what, the who, and the when. As an example, 9th grade on track, which is on the first page, has an action there. 9th grade on track to graduate rates will increase for all grade 9 students by at least 3% each year. That's a great SMART goal, but what's not missing is who's going to do what when. For example, what are the teachers going to do and when are they going to do it to help contribute to that? What's the guiding coalition going to do? So I wanted to put those before you tonight because as we move forward and start talking more about board goals later in the agenda, some of this may come up. Do you have any reaction or questions or input about the lessons that I've learned this year?
You're thoughtful and intentional, and you have very high expectations of yourself and your teams, which is it's commendable, and prioritizing the priorities and being thoughtful about pacing is a great perspective to bring to the team. Yeah, so thank you.
Reviewing the strategic plan, there is a lot of work that's been done. I mean, huge amount of work and lots of successful stuff. And like you said, we just need to begin to prioritize. There's just so many things that have gone well this year. It's just like an about face of what was to what is. So I want to thank you for the entire admin team for that and the staff for what they're doing. It's just amazing.
Yeah, and to take a step back and really celebrate those small successes, right? Where did you come from? And now where are you at and where are you headed? And you don't really know what are the big priorities. Everything seems like a priority when you get started until you get in, you're like, okay, now we can kind of dwindle down and really focus on these things. So great reflection.
Thank you. That's all I've got for my report.
And lots of
Lots.
successes to be proud of. And
So much.
And I will share, I recall celebrating the passage of the bond with Rachel saying, oh, you get to pause and celebrate. And her response was, not really. I'm like, oh no, and yet,
Yeah.
pausing and celebrating, even if it's for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
With everyone involved is just so much fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
We need to do that more, Christine.
Yes, Jill, keep them on task to pause and celebrate.
Thank you.
It has been a really good year. Both in the classroom and outside the classroom, as a whole, so, yeah, great job.
Awesome.
All right, board member reports. Anyone have anything they'd like to report? Good. Moving on. Public forum. I don't see anybody in the virtual audience, Jill. Nobody has signed up. Okay, so we will move on. No action items for this month as well. Moving on to our discussion items. Board development for 2023-2024.
So my wondering for all of you is, do you have any ideas yet on where you'd like to head next year for professional learning for your own growth? Just to start the discussion.
Well, a couple things. I don't know exactly which months, But the map, I think would be a good one for one of the months,
Yeah.
once we get more data. And tag, I think would be a good one. As well, once we get all that data. You know, how has it changed what we're doing as a school district, so. Having those be September, no, but maybe middle of the year. Fine. That'd be good.
Yeah, and I liked how we managed last year where we just anticipated a work session every month. And we
Yes.
ended up not meeting to use them. And I would suggest that we calendar a work session every month
I like that idea.
and just have it as a placeholder, and then we can work with Rachel to fill those in on topics as the year moves ahead.
It's easier to get rid of it rather than add it.
Yeah. Yes.
I liked that. Worked pretty well last year.
It did.
Jerry, do you recall if we started those in September or October last year?
Well, I think we might need one in August for board goals, but
Yes.
so that's a board goal. Yeah, I think so. I think we may have skipped September just because everything that was going on with
Yes,
Oktoberfest
yeah,
and start of
yeah.
school year. So yeah,
So board
starting those
goals
work
maybe in
sessions.
August and then wait, skipping
And then
September.
Skip September and
Going
start
into
of October. I think that's.
And that's one of the big things that changed on your board calendar. Out of the 12 months, 7 of them used to say board goals. And
Yeah.
there was kind of a question around,
Are we doing?
what does that
We
mean?
kept postponing.
And so I think that, that changes, and now they're not on there at all because we wanted to have this discussion and see what you thought about that. And maybe it is that we revisit that in August as far as board goals. So that's the next discussion item, but I want to make sure that I get all of your input as far as board development. I'm hearing work sessions.
I would encourage all of us to consider going to the OSBA. Well, they offer ongoing webinars and whatnot, learnings throughout the year, but they have a conference and
August 11th through the 13th, and it's at Salem Convention Center.
It's in Salem.
Is it Salem?
Salem
And then they have
Convention
one in
Convention.
November.
One in August is in Salem.
So I encourage,
It used to be in Bend all the time.
11th through the 13th,
Is that the summer board
the
meeting?
summer.
And then they have the convention in November. as well.
yeah, and November, I think is. So I would encourage everyone to sign up for those. It's nice to be reminded of what our roles are and hear from other elected officials about their experiences and whatnot. I've found great value.
It's not that we don't like to meet, or we do. I like the idea of having a monthly board meeting, that other informal board meeting. Because if we do math and we do tag, I would just like to know some more about either curriculum or what's going on in some of the other schools. And I don't know if I don't know if it's like an administrator, it's like more casual and
Yeah.
more.
Yeah, our work sessions.
Yeah, like a work
Yeah.
session and there may be issues that, it would be easier for us. I think, at least for me, I mean, this is not like my first year, but it feels like my first year. And it just is just kind of, I like when you did the equity thing, and that was wonderful. There's a lot of good stuff that comes out of that. When we had the safety thing, all of that was really important. Yeah.
I appreciate the perspective on having others share with you in
Yes.
addition to me.
Yeah, I would say
Yeah.
it doesn't have
It would be good to.
So noted. Anything else on board development?
Move on to board goals. So looking at August.
May I throw a date out for consideration? Only because Studer will be coming out on the 24th to work with the admin team and department heads. So Studer was wanting to know, our instructional coach from the Studer Foundation, if it would be possible for the board to meet the evening before on the 23rd or the evening of the 24th. And if those don't work, that is absolutely fine.
Both work this
You
week.
both work
I've
for
got
me.
both open.
Preference?
Both work. I would say whatever they
Whatever.
feel they will have the energy for.
Yeah.
Maybe the night before they would feel better, or maybe they want to
Okay.
see how it
Maybe
goes with
after
the
it goes and then
administrators.
talk to us after.
Yeah, and
Just
then talk to
maybe
us
so.
after, yeah,
Okay.
I think either way, I
Yeah.
defer to you all. so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Their real, their focus right now is exactly what I was talking with you about lessons learned and how, less is more. And what are the, like, if we had to pick, as an admin team, if we had to pick our top three, what would they be and why? As a board, if you had to reprioritize and pick your top three that you definitely wanted to see results on by the end of the year, what would those things be and why? And how, as a board, do you make that your goals? How does that sound?
Yeah, sounds great.
Okay.
Are you doing the work with the administrators with Studer here on site here?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Not virtual, in person. Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know why this popped into my head. We had one Saturday development with OSBA as a board, and it was up at the retreat center at the Abbey,
Mhm.
which was really lovely. So not saying we need to mix up the venues, but if we ever do like kind of a different type of work session, or for your administrators to get a different view. I don't know how
Nice.
much they charge up there. It's so beautiful though.
Yeah.
The retreat center at the Abbey. It's wonderful. Mix
Silver
it up.
Falls has a nice one too.
Sometimes it's nice to get people out of their regular
Yeah, absolutely.
Agreed.
venue, mix it up a little bit. All right, so save our dates. Save the dates for October.
And we'll just wait to hear from you,
Yeah.
Rachel,
Yeah.
and there's whether it's the 23rd or.
All right. Sounds good. And then maybe, as far as board development and board goals in the August board meeting, would you like to set dates then for work sessions?
Yeah,
for the
that
year?
sounds
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Do you have anything else to add? Okay.
I was just impressed that Mount Angel Parade had Mams had a float. And I thought that was just wonderful. And I didn't know that we had an equestrian team. And they had a float. Of course you had the athletes, but it was just really nice to see others. It was good. So that just is a really good thing. Say that a lot of community got to see that. Yeah, Mams had a float.
Your chair.
Yeah,
That's great.
It was.
it's well attended parade.
Well, it's.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a good thing. It was really good.
I could be wrong, but I feel like it's the most floats that they've ever had.
Yeah, it was a long,
And
Yes.
there's the most people. Yeah.
yes,
That's outstanding.
So many people.
It's
It's a very good small town parade.
it was very good.
And it was nice to see the school represented.
It was really nice to see the school represented in many different ways. That was great.
And our baseball team went through there too.
Well, yeah, well, we
That was
had the big,
nice.
well, we knew that,
Yeah.
being the
Yeah.
winners, but yeah, it was just good to see.
Yes, definitely.
The equestrian team was handing out flyers with information about the team. So
That's
that
great.
people could join.
Lots of
It was great.
people
It was
did not-
just great. Yeah, it was just great, And the little Mams float was just adorable. Yeah.
Good news. I love that. We can share more and more of that. That's what we want.
The July meeting is adjourned.
Yay.